Hello and welcome back to the top 85 games for the BBC Micro Video Countdown series. In at number 6, it's SimCity. Now, I am really excited to be bringing this game into the Countdown series, and in particular bringing it in at the number 6 spot, because I feel that it's an underappreciated game, and it is truly an amazing feat of both programming and indeed gameplay. Now, it's a very late release for the Beeb. It came out in 1990, and it was the result of Superior Software acquiring the license to make an official port of SimCity itself, which, as a lot of you will know, is a very famous game that was originally developed by Will Wright, and it came out originally for the Macintosh and the Amiga, and subsequently had ports to all kinds of systems. Now, the BBC Micro port, as I say, was produced by Superior Software, and they gave it to the very best man in the business when it came to making ports for the Beeb, Mr. Peter Scott. And the fact that Peter managed to squeeze this game into the Beeb and not only retain pretty much all of the features that the game has in the original version, but also doing so within the very tight memory constraints that the Beeb presented, is nothing short of a miracle. And on top of all of that, it's a very playable version of SimCity. It's not just that he got it to work, he got it to work and it's really good fun to play. And for me personally, it launched a lifelong love of strategy games. Everything from other versions of SimCity that were to come out on the PC in later years, through to the incredible Civilization series developed by Sid Meier. So without further ado, we're going to take a look at SimCity and see what it's all about. Alright, let's start it up. Here we are, Superior Software and Acorn Soft at this stage, 1990, they had merged essentially. Here we are, SimCity. Now, if you are planning to play this game yourself for the first time, I strongly recommend that you read all the instructions, because there's a wealth of material here. Not just the instructions in-game, but also if you can get hold of either an original copy of the instructions like I've got, or indeed if you look around online you'll find scans of them as well. That really helps you get to grips with what to expect. But despite the fact that the game is very complex in terms of how it works, actually from a controls point of view, it's pretty simple. So you've got ZX, asterisk, and question mark for going left, right, up, and down, which controls your cursor. And then you've got arrow keys that basically move your map. And other than the return key to select things, that's really all there is to it. One thing I am going to highlight at this stage is that on top of everything else that Peter managed to squeeze into the game, there's also 4 scenarios as well, which I think is brilliant. You've got San Francisco, Chernobyl, and Hong Kong, and then you've got Peter's own addition to the game, Newcastle. I don't think that one made it into the American edition, but yeah, all 4 scenarios are great fun, and they give you a chance to play with a fully fledged city. In the case of Hong Kong, it's a very well-developed city. In the case of Chernobyl, it's a city that's basically gone bad following the disaster of the nuclear power station going into meltdown. But for now, we're going to try and build our own city. So we're going to press space. Oh, glorious splash screen art as always. Always a reliable feature of a Superior Software game. Alright, here we are. So I'm going to create Hodebra, and we are terraforming. Now, when it terraforms, you get a random map every time, and you can have a look at that map by pressing this icon here. It just gives you an idea of the full layout. And this is really important, because you must get the positioning of both your residential zones and your power station in a good place early on. Because if you mess that up, you essentially end up with a city that's just not runnable. So I've got not a bad map here, because I've got a nice bit of water over on the right hand side, and placing your residential zones near water but far away from power stations and industrial zones is really the that's the sweet spot. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop a power station down here, sort of out of the way. I'm going to make it a nuclear power station, and then what I'm going to do is going to set up some residential zones up here. Now, with SimCity, it's very much a case of you should sort of go big or go home early on, because you really want to get a decent number of people moving into your city at the start if you want any hope of being able to get enough taxes coming in to obviously ensure that you can fund further development of the city. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to connect up our residential zones. We need to send a power cable all the way up from obviously from the power station. But before I go all the way to the edge, you need to build a road around the residential zone, and then you can pop a power cable over the road. But you can't do it vice versa. So you can't put a power cable. You can't put a road over a power cable. It's one of the slight limitations there. So anyway, let's pop a road around here. There we go. And then if I just take that final step, there we go. Now I've powered up my residential zone, got a police station in the middle to keep the crime rate down. And here's our year-end report. Now I'm currently spending 126 quid every year. Got £100 on police because I've built a police station. They cost £100 a year to run, and then I've built a little bit of road so far, so £26 worth of upkeep for that. I'm not bringing in any taxes, so I'm going to nudge that up to 2% for now. I don't want to put it up too high because otherwise you frighten off the residents if you do that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to build another residential zone because, as I say, it's really important to try and get people into your city quickly, so that you have a decent revenue flow coming in. You can see that my residential zone is already starting to develop there. You see those little icons that are popping up on oops, oh dear, that's probably a bit too big. Whatever, let's go for it. Let's have a slightly bigger non-grid shaped resident zone here, because what that means is I can put both a police station and, in this case, a fire station in there. There we go. Yes, so as I say, you want to see people moving into your city. That's a very good sign if they start developing those residential zones, because all the while they're just capital R's. They're not really doing anything. It's not really. It's a residential zone in theory, but not actually doing anything in practice. I can't build a road over the water there. Now I've got a bit of debris there that I need to clear. So let's just bulldoze that so that I can connect up that road. So that will help to ensure that the residents can move around. There we go. So I've got a couple of residential zones, a slightly larger one on the right hand side, slightly because I nudged my cursor too far over as I was building it, but not to worry. Now we've got a year-end report. Let's see how we're doing. £23 coming in, £352 going out. So we're not really balancing the books at the moment, but that is partly down to the fact that we haven't got many people moving in just yet. They are starting to move in. There we go. The second residential zone now is starting to pick up. Now you can check how you're doing at any time by popping in here. I've got a fairly decent approval rating for this early on in the game, I have to admit. 63% is not bad. In terms of what people are moaning about, taxes at the moment they're quite happy with, but that's because they're only at 2%. And I am going to have to increase that because the city isn't going to be able to fund itself on 2% taxes. Traffic, not too bad. Again, I've got some roads connecting people together, so that's okay. Now, they aren't happy about unemployment, and that's fair enough because I haven't built anywhere for them to work yet. So I am going to have to put together some commercial and some industrial zones for them. And fire protection, well, I've only just built that fire station, so it's not surprising. And it takes a couple of years sometimes for things to start taking effect in SimCity. So let's give them somewhere to actually go to work. So let's build our first commercial zone over here. We'll pop commercial zones along here. I'm going to leave that space in the middle for now because that can be useful. Oh, hang on. First things first, you should always try and connect the power as soon as possible because it takes a little time for the power to actually start to connect up to the commercial zone. But as long as you connect one block, as I have done there, all the others can then obviously connect to that one square. So now we've got a fledgling commercial zone here. And to keep the crime down, I'll pop another police station in the middle. And let's see how that starts to take shape. Now the other thing you can do is you can obviously build industrial zones. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an industrial zone. Oh, hang on, year-end reports come through again. 36 coming in, 478 going out. Now, I don't want to push the tax rate up just yet because I really don't want to scare off my residents who are starting to move into the city, and I do need a decent residential population So let's keep the taxes low for now, but I am going to have to obviously boost them in a bit. So we're going to create an industrial zone over here. You need to keep your industrial zone fairly far away from the residential zone, because otherwise people don't like it because of the pollution and everything else, which is reasonable. So did I select that? Yeah, select that road. Let's connect up our industrial zone. I'm choosing to use roads basically because they are cheaper to maintain. They don't cost as much money at the end of each year, but you do have the option to build railways, and actually as the game develops you can start to look to replace some of your roads with railways, because it cuts down on pollution, and it's also faster connection and so on, and helps to boost development. Okay, commercial zone is really taking off here. Look, we've got a couple of commercial office buildings here, which is good, because that means that in turn helps to encourage more people to move into the city, because they know that they've got somewhere they can work. We've only just started our industrial zone down here, so I'm not expecting to see anything major just yet. Because it's next to the power station, as I say, I don't need to worry about connecting it up with power lines. Well, there you go, look, commercial zone really starting to take off there. So yes, at the moment we're not doing too badly. The only problem I have, which is not an inconsiderable problem, is that I'm not balancing the books at all. £57 coming in at the moment, playing to 513 going out. So I think what I'm going to have to do is pop the taxes up a bit, because I am getting a relatively decent population here, and hopefully with a bit of extra tax percentage there, we might start to see a bit more coming in. Now, one of the other things you can do to improve the land is you can build parks. The only issue is I don't think I've actually got any space up there to build any parks, so I might just put some parks down here, and then put some over here as well, because residents like parks, and it helps to improve the land value, which you'll have noticed when we go in here. You can see on the right hand side there, land value at 12,755. Wow, my approval rating has gone up to 72%, and actually across all of those metrics, fire protection, taxes, crime and pollution, I'm not doing too badly at all. I just need to make a bit more money. Otherwise the city is going to grind to a halt, because if you run out of money in SimCity, you really haven't got much of a hope of being able to continue. You have to start demolishing things, and unfortunately demolishing things doesn't actually get you any money, it just stops money going out. But we'll see where we get to with the end of year report for 1904, because I'm hoping with my industrial zone picking up over here, you can see that's starting to develop. Commercial zone really developing there, and yeah, we've got a reasonable population coming in. Hopefully that, combined with my increased tax rate, might start to see a bit more. There you go, 218 now coming in. It's still not enough to cover my expenses. So what I might do next is go for gold. Ooh, actually, I don't know if I can afford it. I think, I can't remember now. I think a stadium possibly. Yes, I have got enough for a stadium. Whew, thank goodness for that. Now, good thing about a stadium is that it really encourages people to move to your city, and obviously people like a stadium, so we're going to pop one over here and cross our fingers and hope that encourages a bit more residential development, because as I say, the more people you can get into the city and the more development you get on these residential squares, the more taxes you will bring in. So I'm going to put that there. So we've got a pretty healthy development in our industrial and commercial zones, and hope that starts to, with the stadium as well, maybe we'll start to see a bit more on the residential front as well. So while we're waiting for my city to develop a little bit more, just a bit more information along the bottom here. So a couple of things I haven't built: airports and ports. Port helps you to develop your industrial zone, and an airport helps to develop your commercial zone, but they're both very expensive. The airport in particular is £10,000, so they're not really designed for little cities like mine at the moment. That's for when you start to obviously grow in size. This is worrying because I'm on 229 coming in and 525 going out, and my funds are really low. So I'm really only going to let that go for one more year, and then I might have to rethink things a bit. But it's not an easy game. It's it is hard to get the right balance. I had a really good game of it last week actually. And I had an awesome city that I built, and it spanned a good percentage of the map. I don't know whether this one's going to take off in quite the same way. It has had a promising start, but on the funding front, I am looking a bit worrisome. Now, the other thing you can use to keep track of your progress is the charts here. Now, these take a little bit of getting used to, but basically you've got a cluster of red, black and cyan bars for the last few years, obviously the most recent year on the right-hand side. And you can see that at the start, my residential was really dipping. That indicates that you're not pleasing the residents of your city at all. If you see that going negative, it's a bad sign. The black is for commercial and the cyan is for industrial. So you can see that actually on the commercial and the industrial front, I've been doing not too badly. And the residential one really started to pick up, although it's not now picking up quite as well. And then the second graph, here you get to see how you're doing on crime, unemployment and approval. So you can see at the start, my crime rate was terrible. It's now reduced significantly. So once it starts going into positive figures, that means you're doing well. Unemployment, if it's in positive figures, that means people have got enough work to do. So we're doing well there. And then obviously approval rating. You can see that I was doing absolutely diabolically, which is always the case at the start of the game. But that's now picked up a little bit, although it has now gone down a bit too. So I'm suspecting that I'm on 58% now. But that's a reflection of the fact that I put taxes up. Grid on 100%, that's a good sign. That means that everything is connected to the power station, so you haven't got any zones that are without power. So that's a good sign. Population could do with being a bit bigger though. That's the only problem I've got here. Well, that and the funding problem, obviously. So yes, don't know whether we're going to be able to salvage this particular iteration of Hodebra, but hopefully this gives you an indication of what you should start out doing. So if you're new to the game, particularly on the Beeb, this is roughly how you should go about starting it up. You want to build sort of solid grid sort of structures like this. Maybe if I'd built the stadium a little earlier on, that might have helped encourage people into the city in greater numbers. I have fairly well balanced. I've got 3 more residential zones than I have the total of commercial and industrial. So technically I could build 3 more zones for the purposes of employment. But yeah, you see, this is still a problem. 227 to 525. I think what I'm going to have to do is nudge this up. They're not going to like it, but I'm going to have to nudge it up because at the moment I am not bringing in enough money, and unfortunately if I can't bring in enough money, then I can't really do anything more with my city, and then I'm going to go bust and it's probably going to fall apart because it's a very challenging game. You can't really sit back and just watch the city develop, because if you take your foot off the pedal and you stop developing the city, people start moving away. Even if it's a well-looking city, if you don't interact with it, people will start moving away. Now, the other thing we haven't talked about is disasters. So disasters can strike at random. So there are 3 types of disaster. There is tornado, there's earthquake, and there's a monster, aka Godzilla. So they can just happen at random, but if you're feeling particularly malicious, or if you just feel like, ugh, this city is no good, it's not developing properly, I'm going to start again, rather than just starting again, what you can do is throw a disaster at it and just see what happens. So depending on where we get to funding-wise, I might actually initiate one of those disasters, or several, just so you get to see what they're all about. And then what we might do after that is go and have a look at 1 or 2 of the scenarios, just to get a full feel for what the game offers. But yes, I'm not looking particularly optimistic, because although this residential zone, or both of them, they are really developing quite well, they're not developing fast enough, and I'm not bringing in the money quickly enough. So let's see where we get to at the end of this year. Well, 405. It's getting closer to what I need it to be, but I'm not making a profit. And the problem is that if I'm not making a profit, I'm not going to have any funds to really do anything more with the city than I'm already doing. So there aren't many levers at my disposal, unfortunately. I've already built a stadium. That's not bringing in enough people. And unfortunately, with only £755 to play with, there's not much more I can do. So what I think this calls for is a couple of disasters. So first of all, let's try an earthquake. So an earthquake, brilliant effect there. It shakes up the city, and what you'll find is you're left with all kinds of black holes. So you can see here that my power's out now. Look, see the connection between my power station and the city has been utterly wrecked. And obviously a lot of my roads have got holes, my commercial zone. So what you have to spend your time doing after a disaster like this is basically bulldozing and rebuilding. But of course, if you don't have very much money, there's not much you can do there. Then we've got tornado. So you can see the tornado making its way, but it didn't actually hit our city. So we were actually lucky on that. Well, I mean, I say lucky. I've basically written this city off now. But that's the tornado. And then, of course, everyone's favourite is Godzilla. Here he is. He's a bit like Barney, actually. Got a yellow Barney. But there you go. He's stomping around over there. But again, he's nowhere near our city. So he appears in a random place. So let's bring him back. Oh, there we go. He's over here this time. No, he's gone off into the sea. All right, let's do one more. No. Oh, yes, there he is. Look, he's close to our city. Look, he's gonna. Yeah, here he goes. He's on a rampage. Poor old Hodborough. Yes. Well, that's the disaster. Look at that. He stomped right through there, and you can now see that as a result of those disasters, actually. Still bringing in £388, but I strongly suspect that my, as you can see from the barometers on the left-hand side, they have gone into solid negative territory. Surprisingly, I'm still on a 50% approval rating, but I don't think that would last much longer. I think if I played this for one more year, that would probably be a complete write-off. Yes. Anyway, I think that the city of Hodborough is well and truly done for. So what we're going to do is load up a couple of the scenarios just so you can get to see those because they are good fun. So let's have a look at Newcastle. Here we are. Oh, it's gone straight into a loading screen there. Please wait. I'm just having a think about it. Quite sure what's happening there. Oh, I see. Yes, it's okay. It was just calculating. All right. So yes, this is Newcastle. I think it's according to the description, it's Newcastle circa 1960. But yeah, this gives you a nice feel for what a developed city looks like. Although, as you can see on the left, approvals wise, yeah, they're not happy at all. So yeah, there's a lot of work to do in this scenario to try and resuscitate the fortune of Newcastle. You've got a £15,000 budget, so there is a reasonable amount of money to play with there. But yeah, it just gives you a nice idea of what a developed city could look like. My personal favourite is Hong Kong, so I'm going to load that one up just again so you can see that one. This one is yeah, a very, very well developed city, and obviously it's modelled on the city of Hong Kong. So you've got Hong Kong Island over here. This is the commercial district along Hong Kong Harbour, and you've got the residential districts and some industrial behind it. You can see the MTR, the network, the rail network here. Go over to this side, you can see some nice parks. And then over on this side, the Kowloon Peninsula, you've got more residential zones here. You've got an airport. Look, there's Hong Kong Airport, as was. It's the old airport, of course. And then, yeah, if you look at it on the map view, you can kind of see the layout. So it actually has been very much modelled on the geography of Hong Kong there. So that's a pretty smart scenario. I like that one. That's good fun to play with. Again, you start off not doing too well, so you're not a popular governor. Now, the other ones that we have, San Fran. So this is I think a scenario of San Francisco post earthquake, the infamous San Francisco earthquake. Although I think actually in this case, given that the game... No, 1906, there you go. I was going to say, it said 1997, of course, that was for the Hong Kong scenario. Yes, 1906, so this is after the famous San Francisco earthquake. Actually, I should have said on the Hong Kong scenario, 1997, of course, the game was developed in 1990, so Peter would have put that scenario together in the expectation of the handover to come in July 1997. Anyway, yes, this is the San Francisco scenario post-earthquake, so you can see this one needs an awful lot of work. You're given £2,500 to obviously try and salvage the city. Well, that's a challenge in its own right. And then the final scenario is, of course, Chernobyl. So this one is in the wake of the Chernobyl disaster. So basically, 1986. You can see terrible fallout here that's happened after the nuclear power station has gone. There it is, has gone into meltdown. So again, it's another rescue the city style of scenario, and another good fun sort of challenge to play. I think this is possibly the hardest of all of them. To try and make Chernobyl into a success story after a nuclear meltdown is quite the task, especially with only £15,000 to play with. But there you go, those are the scenarios. We've had a look at what it takes to build a city from scratch, and I'm hoping that in this review you will have learned to, if you hadn't already, love this edition of SimCity, brought to us by the amazing Peter Scott via Superior Software. Obviously the game itself may have not originated on the Beeb, but I think it's fair to say that it's an absolutely outstanding piece of work to have got a game as complex as SimCity, with all of the algorithms that it takes to keep a game like this running. You've got so much like going on behind the scenes to obviously deal with things like the approval ratings and how you're doing across all the 3 zones. It's just, I still struggle to comprehend that a game like this can be made to run on a BBC Micro. Or indeed an Acorn Electron. So yes, absolutely outstanding work from Peter, and a really, really good fun game. If you like strategy games, you absolutely must play SimCity on the Beeb if you haven't before, because it's just a technological marvel and a great game to boot. So anyway, I'm going to leave it there. That was SimCity from Superior Software, developed by Peter Scott, based on the original game by Will Wright. And I've brought it in at number 6 because I truly believe it is one of the finest games that was ever produced for the Beeb. And I hope that you will agree with me. Maybe you don't, maybe you do, but either way, if you want to leave me a comment in the comment section, perhaps you've got memories of this game, perhaps you've never seen it before, either way, I would love to hear from you. And until the next time, I hope that you will join me for the next video in the series. And until then, goodbye.